Hello, everyone, and welcome to our monthly webinar. My name is Justin Cooper. I'm a hard money lender and full-time real estate investor and coach and consultant. Each month, we bring in some of our friends in the industry to share their expertise. This may be through a presentation, like when we talk about self-directed IRAs or title insurance, or we may simply interview our expert friends and dive deep into how they got started, where their investing has taken them, and what they see coming both for themselves and for the industry. I want to say thank you to everyone who made it to tonight's event. We know you're giving up some of your time, so Stephen and I will do everything we can to bring you the value that you're hoping for. This webinar is brought to you by Pine Financial Group. Pine Financial is Colorado and Minnesota's premier hard money lender. Pine focuses on the needs of Colorado and Minnesota real estate investors, and we're investors ourselves, so we know what it takes to get deals closed. Everyone at Pine Financial Group is dedicated to the success of its clients. We only experience success when our clients are succeeding. So we have a habit of telling you when our deals should or should not be done. And isn't that what you want from a professional in the industry, especially someone that you trust as an advisor? You will benefit from our honesty and integrity when you choose to work with us. Now, tonight's webinar brings in friend and investor Steven Pesavento. Steven is an investor and entrepreneur who has flipped 150 plus houses within his first 2 years in the business. He's based out of Denver and he manages a team investing out of state in the Southeast and Midwest regions. He hosts the Investor Mindset podcast and community, which has been skyrocketing up the charts, focusing on mindset, strategy, and success. He learned everything he knows by finding great mentors and partners to learn from and modeling their success. Now, Stephen, I gave the listeners just a little bit of a taste about who you are, but go ahead and tell us a little bit more about who you are and how you got here before we really start diving into the presentation.
I love it and excited to be here, guys. Justin, while I'm doing that, if you can change the settings so that I can see the attendees chat, I'd like to be able to see feedback and things that are coming through. If you can make that adjustment, cool. If you can't, whatever. But a little bit about me, guys. I started in real estate about 3 years ago. Never had done a deal before. And obviously in that time have done over 200 deals. A good portion of them were full flips, about 80 of them, a little under 80. And the rest were all wholesales. And I've done that all remote, over the last 3 years. And I kind of came into the business just with this dream, probably the same dream that a lot of you guys have or had when you came in, just thinking, hey, well, I feel like real estate's going to be the vehicle that's going to get me where I want to be, to have that financial freedom, to be able to live the kind of life that I want to go after. And for the longest time, I had seriously wanted to get into real estate, but I just didn't really believe that I could do it. I didn't believe that I had the experience or the money or the connections, and all these things were really holding me back. But fortunately, I was able to figure it out, and I run a team in North Carolina and Minnesota, our two primary markets. I live here in Denver. I started the company while I was in Southern California, and the reason for that, going out of state, was just I knew that the amount of money that it took for me to go find a deal in Southern California was super high in comparison with what it would take for me to go out to another market in the Midwest or Southeast. And, I don't recommend splitting your focus into two different places, but what I have done is, about 40% of our business is in Minnesota and about 60% of it's in Raleigh, North Carolina. And some of you guys probably know us, Von Finch Homes out there in Minnesota, or potentially have been on our buyers list. We've been really ramping things down in the Minnesota market as we're getting super focused in Raleigh. We still do deals. We're just not doing them at the same volume of, 30, 40, 50 deals a year. So that's just a quick little introduction. I know you've got some other questions for me, Justin.
Yeah, so that's interesting that you're shifting the focus and ramping down, ramping up. Tell us a little bit about why, if you don't mind. Why shifting the focus?
Yeah, I think that's a good question. So let's see. When I started 3 years ago, I didn't know anything about real estate, and I think that at the end of the day, we really have a few different options, right? We can only put our focus into so many areas, and in order to really succeed at our best, we really need to be focused on one or two things at most. And so while running two companies in two places, I wasn't very focused, right? We were doing a lot of deals. We were spending a lot of money. I spent over $1 million on marketing in the last 3 years. And so I have some pretty serious experience on what it takes to go out and find a deal. And so the kind of marketing that we're doing in Minnesota now is just super targeted. We're only going after deals that have high margins, that have the ability for us to really be able to not fight against the grain, because, Minnesota is a pretty smart market. People really know what their house is worth. There's a lot of competition, but frankly, we're seeing that in every single place, in every market that we know people were operating in. But for me, it came down to, what is my end goal? And my end goal when I got into real estate was to build passive income, and use the money from wholesaling and flipping to get to that place. But what I realized along the way, which I'm sure a lot of you guys will realize, and raise your hand or drop some chats in the chat box if you ever felt like this, but all of a sudden I realized I was on this path towards building this massive company that's doing, almost 100 deals a year, but I wasn't getting closer to that end goal of passive income. And why? Because even being focused as I was on going out and finding great deals, flipping them or wholesaling them, to really be able to scale the way that I wanted to for my personal goals, I needed to be able to pull back and really redirect my energy in the right place.
Yeah, that's really interesting. And I think we see that and hear that all the time. People want to get into real estate investing. They think they want to be self-employed. They want to, build this thing for themselves. But when they get into flipping, what they're really doing is creating their a job for themselves, right? And because it's your job and your business, you eat, breathe, and sleep it, and so you never get away from it. But also, you're not necessarily setting yourself up for that long term, because if you don't have that next deal, you don't have that next paycheck, right?
Yeah.
And so it's difficult to balance the two, of having a wholesaling, which is transactional, or a flipping business, which is transactional, and making sure that you're supplementing it with, if you want to stay in the real estate world, that you're supplementing it with the rental business, because that's where that passive, the long term, like we were talking about, right, with the coaching and consulting I'm doing, helping folks focus on that passive income to cover their base expenses, or to even scale up assets, so that eventually they don't have to have the transactional wholesaling and fixing and flipping business. They can just kind of sit back and let their money make money for them, and continue to earn money passively through rentals.
Well, 100%. But at the end of the day, too, it comes down to just knowing that you've only got so much time. And so if you're going to go, I see this a lot, especially I have a few folks that I've been talking with that are looking at joining the mastermind, the mindset mastermind program that we're putting together. And I was talking to this one guy, and he is currently in, I'm not going to say the state because who knows, you might be listening, but he's currently operating in 3 or 4 different markets while he's working a full-time job as a wholesaler. And he's also buying rental properties, and he's also got like 2 other little hustles going on. But frankly, he's not doing any of them super well. He's doing all of them marginally. And if I was going to step into a coach or a mentor type role and speak to him, what I would say is you need to shut down most of what you're doing and figure out from an 80-20 perspective, what is giving you the most ROI. And so we did that. We looked at the market in Raleigh, extremely competitive, but a lot of growth. And we were just frankly doing better there. More of our business was coming in. And the other big thing was from a mission standpoint, I started the Investor Mindset podcast, which has been growing like crazy. I really did it to build some connections with some incredible investors, to build an awesome community of people who think like I do, and really to contribute and help folks along the way, because I know I was dealing with some of this stuff. But what's crazy about it is I started it for myself with these other people in mind, but it was so fulfilling, and it definitely not making me any money, though it definitely can. I realized that for me to be able to give what I want to that project, I would need to pull back somewhere else, and it only makes sense. Plus, we're moving in a direction of focusing on some much larger assets. But enough about why we're changing directions. At the end of the day, people are probably interested, well, how can I apply this to my own business?
Yeah, but I think that's a great insight into other people's businesses, right? And that's where a lot of people join the webinar, especially with these interviews, is that they want to see, what are other people doing, how are they doing it, how do they get where they are, and where are they taking it. And so you being in the middle of this transition is, I think, awesome, as well as the podcast. So I listen to it all the time. I think the podcast is awesome. So in case they didn't write that down or make a note of it before, what's the name of the podcast one more time, to make sure that people can subscribe and listen in?
Yeah, so the podcast is called the Investor Mindset Podcast. Go search Investor Mindset Podcast on iTunes or Stitcher or Spotify. You're going to see us pop up right at the top. We are in, the top ranked investor and business podcast. We've been on the front page of iTunes for 8 weeks. You'll see great interviews from people like Joe Fairless, Mark Kenny, Rod Khleif, Bill Allen, Don Costa, Justin Williams, a ton of big name folks, and a lot of people you might not have heard of. But really what we get down to in there is we're not talking tactics. We're not talking about what's the new marketing channel or how to do cold calling or how to go find your next rental. What we're doing is we're actually getting deep into the psychology of some of these really successful people. And what we end up getting out of that is we understand how they think and what they believe. And the truth is, what I found out is that those thoughts and beliefs lead directly to the consistent action that they take. And that action is the reason that they're successful. So we'll get into some of the things that I learned from interviewing, 60 plus investors. And I just got done having an incredible summit over 2 days online, which was full of these people. But what I want to encourage you guys to look for when you're talking or listening to investors, whether that's on a podcast, whether that's right now, whether you're talking to Justin or other mentors along the way, is you want to start listening for how are they thinking differently than I am? What do they believe to be true for them to think what they're thinking, and how could I apply that in my own life? How could I take those thoughts and beliefs that they have and install them into my head so that I can actually move forward and start actually executing on the tactics of going after that marketing channel or raising that private money or going out and getting that hard money loan or flipping that house or whatever it has to be. They're thinking differently than the people who aren't doing it. And so if you're one of those people who aren't doing it or wants to do more, just look to what other people are doing and you can start applying that directly yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. And so what I think you've done a great job of over the course of hosting this podcast is, you take a step back and you're reviewing and you're doing exactly that. What are those key traits? What are they saying and doing and thinking, and how are they putting it to use? And so it seems like you've been distilling all of that information from all these interviews, all these other experts and investors, and you've kind of drilled it down to at least 5 main topics that you're picking up on, right?
Yeah, there's five main topics, and there's definitely more, but I think within these 5 concepts, these 5 philosophies, it really is going to change if you can even apply just a little bit of each or just apply 2 of them and drop the rest. It'll change your whole investing career. And I myself, right, I am successful. I've done a lot of deals, but I myself am always looking to these other people to understand, well, hey, how could I think differently? So I'm just like you. I just happen to be in the host chair asking these questions to really dive in so that I myself can grow. And so the first thing that I found after interviewing all these people, and one of my first questions I ask really dives into this. And what I ask is, what events or influences from your childhood shaped who you are today? And usually what people end up talking about is challenges, right? And regardless of whether they're answering that question or they're talking about challenges within their business, these successful investors, these successful people, most of them multimillionaires, they think about challenges in their life differently, and it drives them forward, right? Rather than being negative and holding them back. So, they recognize that they grow through adversity. And the truth is, it's not that the challenges don't suck. It's just that they've redefined how they look at those challenges, and they appreciate how they really create us into being the people that we are. And one really good example of this, you guys might know Don Costa. He's an incredible flipper out of California. 140 flips a year, no big deal, multiple markets. This guy is insane. But what's really crazy is that, in 2008, he ended up losing his butt. He had over $1 million judgment against him. He lost businesses and buildings, really all the way down to, as the story he often shares, he couldn't even afford Taco Bell for his family when he got turned away. And I know you know him. But what's crazy about this is that experience, when he looks back at it, it sucked. And he was, laid up in a chair for a while, depressed, unhappy. But what he realized was he snapped himself out of it. He recognized that, okay, well, this is an opportunity for me to make big change. I'm going to go back to doing the things that I know that I'm good at, and I'm not going to let it hold me back. The same with Rod Khleif. If you know Rod Khleif, multifamily investor, very successful coach and mentor, owns hundreds and hundreds, probably thousands of units. he lost over $50 million in 2008. His whole net worth went to zero, and he lost everything. And the way that he looks at it, the exact phrase he says is he looks at these challenges as seminars. So most of
Mm.
us would just say, F this, I'm giving up. I'm taking my ball and I'm going home. But these successful investors, they look at those challenges as a lesson, right? It's an expensive lesson. It's an expensive seminar, as Rod calls it, but it's one that is really going to make the biggest change in our lives, because when it hurts, we know we don't want to deal with that again. So we're going to learn how do we grow from that into the right direction.
Yeah, absolutely. And so similarly, on my first flip, I wound up losing money. Now it didn't crush me, thankfully, but I lost $10,000, and that was not $10,000 that I had to lose, you know. And so, similar to probably a lot of folks you have on your podcast, right? It set me back, it slowed things down. But I was able to Monday morning quarterback it, review it, go back through all the numbers. What did I screw up? What happened? And I bought the property in 2007. I sold it in 2008. So it could very easily have been just written off and as the market. The market was crashing, the whole world was crashing. That's what happened. Poor me, bad timing, move on with my life. But it wasn't. I made so many mistakes on that. And I was able to take a step back, reflect on that. I've actually put together, because I've told so many people this story, I put together a whole presentation. I whittled it down to similarly the 5 major reasons or things I screwed up on it.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I love that one, that viewing challenges as opportunities, right? And seminars and ways to learn from it. Absolutely. I 100% agree with that.
Yeah, you just have to realize that the past does not equal the future, no matter if the past was good or bad, right? So we can't
That's a
let
great.
ourselves be attached to something that was happening in the past. And, I lost money on plenty of flips. I had one where I paid $100,000 to close the deal, and it was the greatest feeling in the world to have that off of my books, because I
Yeah.
had it for over, almost 18 months, almost as long as I was in the business. We were just sitting on this property that was supposed to make us 150,000, and it ended up just being a big money pit. And that happens. Fortunately for me, I was not just going to do one deal. I had 30 deals going on at the same time. So one of them dies and the other one makes up for it. But if that would have been my very first deal, that would have been a pretty tough pill to swallow. Although the very first deal didn't go so hot anyways, but by taking this action, by looking at it as how am I going to apply this knowledge in the market, I was able to move forward. But the other big thing, number 2, is that they're ultra focused, right? And so I just talked a little bit about having one focus, and there's a book called The One Thing by
Such a good
Gary
book.
Keller. And I just interviewed Jay Papasan, who is Gary Keller's writer and right-hand person on everything in the publishing world, and got really deep into it with Jay on the podcast. I recommend you check out that episode if you're looking for some knowledge on that book. But what it really comes down to is they're super focused, and they have one, maybe 2 priorities, meaning they're only going in one direction at a time. They're not rowing in 2 directions. They're not trying to run 2 different markets. They're not trying to flip and do multifamily. They're not trying to go market for properties and learn how to do that while also trying to learn how to flip a property. Now, maybe in this market today, you have to market to find a deal, but maybe not, right? If you have the right mentorship, you can find ways to be the best at flipping and make the money on actually managing the property well and being phenomenal at that, because it's kind of hard to be really good at 2 or 3 or 4 things at a time. And what you guys are probably saying to yourself is, Steven, that's BS. I know a lot of successful people with multiple companies, and I know a lot of successful people who are flipping and doing multifamily, and they're in multiple markets. And yes, you are right. But most of them did not start doing 5 things at once, because how many of you guys are going to listen to another webinar or another podcast tomorrow, today, next week, and this is going to talk about a different strategy? And it's normal for us to think, oh, well, snap, that's that's the strategy. Why am I doing this boring strategy over here? I got to go do that strategy. That's what I should do. And then we go shiny object syndrome from thing to thing. And we never give ourselves enough time to get really good, to get to that point where we're an expert. And another way of putting it, we never build the habit of being really good at things. And when we build a habit, that means that we don't have to consciously think what we're going to do, right? It's like talking on the phone and driving. You probably weren't doing that when you're 15 in driver's ed, but you're probably fine doing it now. Even though it is taking a little bit of focus away, it's fine to do because you're really good. So that is the big, I mean, it's just a huge thing. And one really good example of that, from episode 7 of the Investor Mindset, interviewed Joe Fairless, right? And if you guys know Joe, you know his podcast, but I don't know if you guys know this, but he's got $750 million of multifamily real estate assets under management. And last time I talked to him, he had 500,000, and that was only 4 months ago. And he's probably going to be at $1 billion before the best ever conference in February.
February,
And the reason that is because he's focused on really 2 things. And there's a couple other things that have built upon it, but he's 100% only focused on multifamily, only focused on large multifamily. And he's doing all this with a 5-person team. And one of the person is his assistant, and one of them is the person who is running the whole company. So the point I'm making here is he can do this successfully because he's focused 100% on one niche. He has chosen a strategy where he's going to outsource asset management. He's going to outsource, analysis of these deals, underwriting, et cetera. He's going to hire people to do this, and he's going to focus on just managing the experts. And then his second thing is the podcast, which he's been doing forever. And the reason that was his second focus, which was actually his first focus, he just chose multifamily, and this was the tool to get there, was because by using that podcast, he was able to connect with 365 people a year to network with. And he's had one of the longest running 7-day-a-week podcasts out there. And by doing that, he's able to spend hardly any time in his investing business, and he's, making some serious money.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that book was awesome. The one thing, just in the clarity it provides, right? Like, what's the big question? What is the one thing that you can do by doing so makes everything else easier? Just drill it down. What's the one thing I can do? Is that marketing? Is it getting out to my properties every day? Is it, handling and getting good at managing my contractors? Is it getting good at kitchen table conversations, right? In my wholesaling business, is it getting clarity and just crushing it at my regular W-2 job, so that I can get another raise, a bigger bonus, and then have more money to invest, whatever it is. But having that ultra singular focus, absolutely huge. I love it. So what's number 3? We're cruising through here. I feel like we're getting number 3, maybe.
We are getting to number 3, but yeah, I mean, focus is the number one thing, people. Like, we're going to get into some other really good things, but if you take away just one thing, take away the one thing and start applying it in your business and your life, because it's going to unlock so much possibilities and potential. So I really encourage you guys there. The next big thing here is that people are operating with a clear purpose. They have a clear why. And we hear about this all the time. And so you're going to think to yourself, well, Steven, I don't need to hear again about the importance of why. I know my why. I'm doing this so that I can travel and do whatever I want. Or I'm doing this so that I can spend more time with my family. Or I'm doing this, and then they'll throw up a slide of their kids and their family. And this is my why. Totally. You're right. That is a symbol of your why. But there's actually, what I found is that by really being able to dive deeper below the surface of that symbol of what that why represents, by asking yourself why another 7 or 10 or 15 or 20 or 5 times, whatever it is for you, to get to that level of clarity, that to the point where they're emotionally connected to it. And so what I mean by that is what I've found after interviewing all these people and talking, and spending thousands of dollars on coaching and mentorship and working with the Tony Robbins organization and crewing and going to these events, what I've found is that below the surface is what it really comes down to. So let's use that example of, well, I want, I want I want to do all this for my family so I can spend some more time. Well, why is that important to you? Well, it's important to me because, I just want them to be able to live the life that I think they deserve. Well, why is that important to you? Well, because when I was growing up, I didn't have that experience. Well, why is that important to you? Well, I just want to spend more time with my family because when I was growing up, as we keep getting deeper, we start to get to some emotional reasons. And these aren't going to speak to you if you're not in that same position, right? They got to be your answers in your words. But the deeper that you dig, what we want to do is we want to get to two things. And you'll hear about this a lot from sales trainers. You hear about it from people like John Martinez, which is one of my favorite people, good friends of mine, episode 33 of the podcast. But what he always talks about is this idea of pain and pleasure. Well, it's the same when we're talking about our why, our purpose, and the direction that we're driving in. And so what I really want you guys to do, what I'd encourage you to do, is when you think about your purpose, when you think about your why, and you think about not getting it, I want you to cry. I want you to scream and kick. I want you to flip over tables, not literally, but I want you to have that emotional feeling inside where this is painful. If I think about my future family not being able to have the life that I believe they deserve, not being able to, having to have worries about money and seeing families fight because that's connected to money, whatever it is for you, when you think about not being able to deliver that and if you attach it to people or a person, it's even more powerful than if it's just for yourself. When you can see and feel that at a really deep emotional level, it'll be powerful. But when you see the positive of it, you feel really good. You feel energized. You feel ready to take on the day. And so what that'll end up doing for you is it'll end up giving you a real clear reason to get out of bed every day. And you'll be able to attach this to the next point that we're going to talk about. You're going to be able to attach this to your goals and, more importantly, your plan of how you're going to achieve those goals so that it actually happens, because there's an emotional connection to the things you're going to do. And I think a great example of that is by knowing his purpose, by creating intentionally. John Martinez has built a business where he's making $1 million a month while not having to travel. That was one of his clear reasons, so that he could spend more time with his family. And one of his children have a really severe allergy to peanuts. And there was a point where that kid got really sick, almost died, and it was really tragic. And that's not the reason that he set these goals, but that is the purpose behind why he was so set on doing it. And now, as you'll notice, if you follow John or his work, he's committed to not traveling. He doesn't want to have to leave, and he's built this business around his purpose, and it's just so energizing. Do you, I know you apply some of this stuff yourself, right?
Yeah, absolutely. So at the Real Estate Investors Success Summit we just did here in Denver a couple weeks ago, I gave a presentation that talked about your vision and your why, and I love that you point out that you need to be diving deeper on your why. Everybody can quickly come up with a why and what that might be, and touch briefly on it. But I love that you mentioned ask yourself why. So, well, because of my family. Well, why your family? And just keep asking that and just repeat it over and over again, whether it's 5 times, 7 times, 20 times, whatever it is. And each time you answer that, ask why to that answer, and just keep putting it on and putting it on and going deeper. And you're going to get to this emotional point. You're going to feel it in your gut. You may tear up. You may get excited and have this glowing smile. And when you start having those like visceral reactions, that's when you know you're getting to the real heart of it, to the real why. And you mentioned having a strong enough why to get you up every day. I don't know what time you get up, Steven, but I'm up at 4:30 in the morning, and the why is part of it. The other reason is it might be my 3-year-old in bed kicking me in the back, but and I just need to get up out of bed. But the other thing that I found that having a big why can help with is not just getting up out of bed, but getting up after you've been, kicked to the ground. right? When you have a deal go south, I mean, we were talking about losing money on deals and things like that. Having a big enough why will get you back up and get you going to the next one, brushing yourself off from a bad sales call, a bad meeting, or having to fire a contractor, whatever it is. Having that big enough why will pick you back up and keep you driving forward.
It is the whole freaking purpose that we're here. And if you can figure that out, which is might take a whole lifetime, but if you can start getting little clues in the direction of where your life's supposed to go and attaching that to a greater purpose, I mean, all of this becomes so much easier. It becomes so much easier that it's like, how did I go from 0 to 75 deals my first year? Well, I decided that I was going to do it. I got attached to a clear purpose and why. And I gave myself no other option. I fired all my contractors. All my consultants or my clients for my consulting business. I had no other way to make money, and so I knew I've got to survive. And when you can light that kind of fire for yourself on a daily basis, consistently, even when you start hitting success, things will continue going in a really good direction for you.
Absolutely. Looks like you've got a strategic stack of books behind you there, Stephen.
I do have some books, and I just thought of it. I mean, Start With Why, great book. Haven't read it for a little bit. If you guys haven't read it, I do encourage you to pick this book up. Great on Audible. Check that out. But I also encourage you guys, if you haven't read it, to just go Google Start With Why and go watch the TED Talk. If you haven't watched it for a while, it is a good little reminder. And what it does in there is it tells you some stories about why it's important to start with the purpose in mind, but it's not going to answer the questions for you. You've got to do the work. You've got to ask yourself these questions. But by getting some examples, it starts to make it easier for your brain to kind of be pre-primed to start thinking about this stuff, for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. And so finding out where you can go and think, right? I mean, you can't be sitting in front of the TV and having these conversations with yourself. You can't be like poring over your Facebook feed and try and have these conversations with yourself. You need to go and, for me, it's getting out into nature, right? If I'm sitting along a creek or a river or sitting at the ocean, hearing the waves, and I just have a little journal, that's where I can get into it. So, I don't know about you, Stephen, but you got to clear out all the clutter if you're really going to get deep and start, getting in touch with who you are.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I mean, that comes back to that focus, having set focus time for you to do work. Before I jumped on here, I was working through a goal planning process for myself, and I was putting together what I'm going to talk about here in a second. And I was actually doing this for something that I knew that was really important. So what did I do? I put my phone far away. I had an alarm set to make sure that I was here on time, but I didn't have any other ability to have distractions. Even my internet was shut off from my computer because I know that I'll just start searching things online. So you just got to start setting up these little goalposts for yourself so you can start actually getting through them. But because I know time is limited and I want to get you guys this stuff so you can get on with your evening here, the next one is obvious. You guys are going to say again, Steven, what the heck? Why are you wasting my effing time with this stuff? But I have to remind you that the fundamentals are the most important thing. The fundamentals are everything. And frankly, I guarantee that at least 50% of this call is doing a really terrible job on some of the things that I talked about. And why do I know that? Because I've been that guy. And from time to time, I am that guy. Week to week, month to month, we all fall into these places. So I'm reminding you while I'm reminding myself about the importance of this. And so this next piece, not the final piece, the next piece is really about having clear goals and a plan. So what I really mean by that is creating intentionally. So we know our purpose, we know why we want it. Now we got to get into what we want. And so a lot of people start the other way. Hey, that's cool. You can start with what you want. I think it can be a good way to get your ideas out on paper. Start thinking about what are the things you want, and then start asking yourself, why do you want those things? And you'll start to get some answers, and they'll start to be a little bit of a theme about why those things are important to you. And then you can understand, okay, well, are these the things that I truly want to be important to me and what my life to be about? But frankly, they are. So you have to acknowledge that, and then you can decide whether or not they're the things that are going to. But when I talk to all of these people, when I talk to all of these investors, they all have clear goals. Now, some people might set it and forget it. Some people might follow traction. Some people might have this stuff running in their head. and others might review and write down their goals every single day. So there's a lot of different strategies to work from a clear plan. But I think what's more important than even the goal is that you've taken the time to set a map of how you're going to get to that goal. And me and Justin were just talking about this before, and I talked about this at the Investor Mindset Summit, which we just had, which was just amazing. But it's this whole idea, and it's a Tony Robbins concept. It's called the Massive Action Plan. He calls it a MAP for short. And at the end of the day, what it really is, in my eyes, is really just taking some time for yourself to brainstorm all the things that you could possibly do to get to that goal, and then prioritizing those and setting some times of when you're going to accomplish it and when it's going to be accomplished by, right? If you can set aside some time for yourself on your calendar to actually plan out when those action items, those most important ones, are going to come, it's extremely powerful. But this is exemplified in a conversation that I had with Derek Gaunt, episode 35. And if you don't know Derek, you definitely know Chris Voss. Chris Voss is the author of Never Split the Difference, of Black Swan Group. He was a former hostage negotiator for the FBI, and Derek is his partner. And Derek also wrote a book, which is why I had the liberty and fortune of being able to interview him. But what he was really getting into is what him and Chris talk about is planning for the negotiation, right? So in the negotiation, you have a goal that you want this outcome. So maybe that's a seller phone call, and you're trying to qualify that lead and see if it makes sense. And maybe the goal is, I'm either going to qualify them out, meaning they're not a fit, or I'm going to qualify them, I'm going to set that appointment. Or maybe it's, I'm actually going to go in, I'm going to try to close this deal. And so what Derek talks about, which is so applicable to the same kind of goals you have in your personal life, is that you need to think ahead. What are the different things that I'm going to say? What are the different tools? He talks about mirrors and labels, but what are the different tools that I'm going to use in this conversation? What are the different strategies that are going to get me there? And I want to think through this. I want to be prepared so that when I show up, I can have all of my brain power focused in the direction of executing, of getting to that goal, versus of trying to always figure out what the next thing to do is. And I don't know if you guys are like me, but I know I have felt like, what's the thing that I'm supposed to do today? I've got a million things in my business, but I guess I'll just jump into email and I'll start responding to people, or I'll jump into Podio and I'll see who called, or I'll wait and check the messages or the text messages to see if anybody responded back. Those are the wrong things to do. Maybe they could be the right things, but the fact that they aren't done with intention means that they're the wrong things. And too many of us are operating from that place. And I hope that you guys know that I'm saying this with love. I'm not saying that you guys are, not living up to what's expected, but I'm just saying we all deal with this stuff on a regular basis. And so just knowing that other people are facing it should give you a little bit of that feeling of like, hey, we're in this together. But it also can give us the chance to just admit to ourselves that, like, oh, well, hey, I could probably do that a little bit better. And so I've got one more here. But before I do, I want to encourage you guys, as you've been listening to this, I want to really encourage you to say, what did I learn from this? What can I take away? And I want you guys to make sure you write that down on a piece of paper. And then I want you guys to decide, what action am I going to take? What is the one thing that I'm going to do leaving this webinar? Otherwise, it's been a waste of your time. Thank you for showing up. Thank you for listening. I love hearing myself sound of my voice. I'm sure Justin does too. But if you guys don't take some action after this, or after you listen to a podcast or after you read a book, then it's really wasting your time doing it. And it's great to learn, but knowledge is nothing without execution. So I want to encourage you guys, I'm going to say it again before we leave, but really start thinking about, what could I get out of this? And even if you think, this guy's an idiot, I don't like him, I don't like what he's talking about, which I'm sure is not what you're thinking. But even if you're thinking that, when you're at an event, or you're listening to somebody speak, or they're pitching you on a product, think to yourself, what could I learn from this? What could I take away? Because there's always something in there. Do you feel the same way, Justin?
Yeah, I love that idea of, setting the intention. I mean, first and foremost, at the beginning of the day, right? And being proactive instead of reactive. If we start checking our emails, we're reacting to somebody else's, questions, issues, problems, whatever that is, right? If we're checking text messages, we're reacting to what somebody else had brought up to us. So I mean, of course, those things have to happen, but they don't have to happen first. So set the
Mhm.
intention. What is my intention for the day? It's this, is that, and then I can go and do those other things and other activities that have to be done today. Um, but I love the fact that you mentioned being intentional when it comes to going to networking events. So many of us as investors go to these networking events, these RIAs, real estate investor associations, meetups, whatever they are, and we just show up, because it's part of our routine. We know that the third Thursday of the month is XYZ meeting, and so I go there. But why are you going there? Is it because I need to find that next wholesaler? I need to find a good contractor. I want to just learn about the topic, and maybe meet that presenter. But by setting that intention, you're going to leave with that benefit. It's going to happen. You can't not make it happen when you put it out there to yourself, to the world, to the universe, to the person who checks you in at the meetings, right? Go in and be proactive towards whatever it is. Absolutely.
I could agree more. And we didn't get into my story about how I actually learned what I now am, running my business on. But I have to say, when you go in with intention, things start happening for you, right? They start happening. It's incredible. You'll be surprised. But the very first mentor that I had in real estate actually came from going to a real estate investor meetup event. It was in Long Beach, California at a Phoebe event, for investors by investors. So a no pitch type event. And I went to that event. I had decided nearly a week before that I was going into real estate full time with no experience, no background, nothing. I was already had fired all my clients. I had made the decision. I had burned the boats, and I went. I went looking for an event, and I saw this event was going on. And there was an investor named Iris who was speaking at this event. She happened to run her own event, but she was an experienced fix and flipper. And I went and found, okay, where can I research her? How can I find out more about her? I went and listened to a Flip Nerd podcast, Mike Hambright's podcast, with her on it, and was just soaking up information. And I was like, okay, well, she's got what I'm looking for. She's got something that really going to help me learn. How can I add value to her life? How can I make a difference in her life so that she'll want to have me around? So I went with a specific intention to that event, and I pitched her on this idea. And the idea was, hey, you run a real estate investor club. You guys have pretty big showing, but your website looks like it was built in 1990. But fortunately, I could build you a $10,000 to $15,000 website for nothing. I run web development teams. I know how to do that. And I'd love to do it for you for free. If you wouldn't mind if I just followed you around for a couple days at the job site. And I was looking for just minimal. Hey, tell me a little bit something about this, and it'll be worth my time to build something out. And I know how to do it. Well, fortunately for me, she stuck her hand out ready to accept my offer before I could even finish. And I got to follow her around for the next 3 months from start to finish on a flip starting the following week. I built her this great website. They're still using it today. We're great friends. We built a good relationship. But I just want to say that by the power of showing up with intention, by having a clear goal in mind, I ended up having this really great outcome, which ended up leading me down this path. And I've had many mentors along the way. But hey, do something with intention.
Yeah, I love it. And so there's two things there, right? It's setting the intention. I need to meet this person. I need to shake their hand and find a way to work with them, or ride their coattails, or whatever it is. But coming not from a place of what's in it for me and how do I get their attention on me, but what can I give to them, right? What can I do to help somebody else? And so I saw a different book behind you, another great one that I love. I've read it several times, The Go Giver. Absolutely. It's and just coming from that place of trying to give, how can I help more people? And if you're good at giving, the other side, of course, is you have to be good at receiving, because the more you give, the more people want to give back to you. So you have to be good at receiving. That's a huge takeaway, that I don't think a lot of people talk about. They talk about being good at giving, but you have to be open to receiving as well, right? And that could just be as easy as just saying thank you. But yeah, if you start by giving, doors will open. People will be falling over themselves to try and give back to you.
I couldn't agree more. And it's just funny how life happens. Those books are not there because they plan to talk about this stuff. They're there because they're great books. I either interviewed the authors recently or was just talking about the topic with a client of mine. But what's just amazing about it is just like, that book is a life changer. I encourage you guys to read it. And in the sense of go giving, in the sense of being a go giver, I want to give you guys something for listening, for participating and being here. I just held a 2-day summit. We had over 16 amazing, incredible speakers at the summit, and the whole thing was great. Hundreds of people showing up. It was online. It was phenomenal. You guys missed it. I know. If we could only had this a little bit before, you would have been able to be there. But we did record the entire thing, and we're selling the recordings. What I'd like to give you is if you end up going to investormindsetsummit.com, if you go to the website, investormindsetsummit.com, go subscribe for free. It gives you free access to the event, and I'm actually having a couple of the videos cut. And if you do that right now today, I will have my assistant go look through everyone who's subscribed in the last hour, and we'll send you a couple of our favorite talks from that event totally free. You can watch them on your time. There will be a timer, meaning you've got to watch it by a certain date, otherwise it's going to disappear. But I do that for your benefit, because if there's no timer, you'll never go and show up and actually consume it. And I want you to get the value, because I know how much these speakers changed my life. So I want to give that to you guys. Is that okay? Justin, is it okay if I give that away to everybody?
I love it. Absolutely. I was watching a lot of those presentations online over the weekend as well. Tons of value. So yeah, I mean, it's free. All you have to do is invest your time, right? So in a way, it's not 100% free, but nothing ever really is. So invest your time, go check it out, sign up, and check out this amazing content from these top performing top real estate investors across the country, and get into their mindset and what they do and how they do it and why they do it. Absolutely. Check it out.
Love it. Investormindsetsummit.com. And so we get into the final piece here. We'll close out the top 5 things that I learned after talking with all these investors. And I want to be clear, you guys are probably going to think controversial. Some people are going to be like, heck yeah, I'm 100% in agreement with that. And other people are going to be like, heck no, it's just a bunch of charlatans out there in this space. But it's the power of mentorship and coaches. And it's the power of learning from people who've been there and hiring the right coaches who can see your weak spots and help you train on them. And so I want to be very, very specific here. As I was interviewing all of these different investors, a lot of them talked about mentors and a lot of them talked about coaches. And often these two are used interchangeably. And I want to make sure that you guys understand what the difference is. So a mentor is someone who has been there before. They've done it. They have direct experience, and you're going to follow in their footsteps. I always use the lantern analogy. I want to go down the path, and I want somebody else who's already lit the way for me so that I can follow down the path, and I don't have to cut my way through the forest. I'm just going to follow in the footsteps of other great people. That's been one of the greatest ways that I've learned, going and finding great mentors and just doing whatever they said. Whatever they said was working in their business, and just ripping it off and applying it to mine works great. A coach, however, they didn't necessarily have to have done what you want to do, but they often are even better at helping us as the coachee, as the player, do it better. And so I think if you think about like the best athletic coaches out there, the best athletic talent wise, Kobe and LeBron aren't the best coaches. They're not going to lead a team to a championship. Who knows? Maybe they will. But they are the best at getting the most talent out of those people, the coaches that are actually leading them. And so what I want to encourage you guys to do is to go out and figure out, well, which one do I need in my life and how am I going to get it? Now there's a million ways, but there's really 2 different ways I see to go find coaching and mentorship. Now I think you can find coaching and mentorship by paying for it. I used to be a believer that coaching and mentoring, you should never have to pay for it. I now totally disagree with it. I spent tens of thousands, if not $100,000 on coaching and mentorship. And I've gotten a huge return on it. Huge return, made a lot of money. Thank God that I spent it. But when I started out with not a lot of money. So I went the earn it type of mentorship route, of where by contributing my time, by giving value, by being somebody that is going and taking action, by being somebody that people know are already on the path to greatness or already on the path to success. They want to help you get there so you can go find other people who can take a little bit of time out of their life to help kind of guide you down that path. So you might be able to go to a real estate investor event. You might be able to meet other investors and find a way for you to connect with them and be able to add value, right? And so what do you think about these ideas, Justin?
Oh, I 100% agree. So something that plays into both of these when you're maybe trying to decide which one is best, or at least best right now, is how much time do you have? If you have the time to be mentored and follow someone around like you did, right, when you're just getting into real estate, if you had 3 months to, wait by the phone, but, I don't know exactly how it worked for you guys, but when your mentor calls and says, hey, we're going on site. Hey, we're going to Home Depot to pick this out. Hey, we're going to the granite shop to pick out the right granite and tile and stuff. And you can just get in the car and go and then pick their brain. That's great. And the price you paid was a couple hours, maybe more, of your time to build that website. But if you don't have that, if you can't just get in the car at the drop of a hat, sometimes finding someone with similar skill sets or someone who's able to guide you in a similar fashion, but is more, the roles are reversed, maybe time wise, right? You pick up the phone and you say, hey, I need to know how to do this. You can have access to people like that by paying them, right? But putting money
Yeah.
out for that, now they're working for you, right? And so you call and ask the questions, they're going to be there ready to answer them.
And they're going to be motivated to answer those questions for you because, like, guess what? If you just called me up out of the blue and wanted to learn how to fix and flip or wholesale or do marketing, I'm not going to take your call, or I'm going to answer it. I'm going to say, hey, I really appreciate what you're asking, but go to bigger pockets. And I'm not doing that to be a jerk. The more successful you get, believe me, I'm doing this to other people. But if you just come with an asking mentality versus a giving, because for example, I was on the Bigger Pockets podcast last year, episode 309, and part of my whole formation story is about delivering value first. And in that, there was a call to action essentially, hey, go out and find people who you can deliver a lot of value to, and you can get some coaching. Like, you'll have a way, you might get a lot of rejections, but you'll find somebody who's going to be a right fit. I had so many people hit me up on Bigger Pockets and just ask me, what's the marketing technique I should do? What should I do here? Why, can you just jump on a phone call with me? Or even worse, believe me, guys, I love getting together with people. I don't mean to sound like a jerk, or even worse, hey, can I just grab a coffee and pick your brain? The answer is no, unless I think that why? But
Right.
I will
You
be
go out
honest.
to coffee with somebody. You just valued your hour, which is usually what a coffee appointment is, for what, $3.50, right? For $5 for that cup of coffee that somebody bought you.
Exactly. And I'm probably going to pay for it too. I'm probably going to pay for the coffee. So, but here's the truth is it's not about that. If I had unlimited time, I'd spend it with everybody. But the people who got the attention, the people who got coached, one of the people I've been working with is doing a ton of work for me. It started out with him offering the same thing I offered the lat lady. I know I can do SEO. I notice you don't have good SEO. I can do it really well for you, and I'll do it for free. He didn't ask for anything. He did that. Then a little bit later, he built the investormindset.com website well after I'd already launched a different website. And now he's getting one-to-one coaching on a weekly basis where he's spending an hour with me every single week, and he's bought multiple wholesale deals. The return on his time is through the roof, and he could have probably bought coaching, and he might have gotten the answers faster rather than waiting a year to get them, to building that relationship. I mean, he got a lot right out the bat. But at the end of the day, what it comes down to is people who are doing this don't just have time to teach you how to do it, unless there's a good incentive where they feel like, well, they want the fulfillment out of it. So they're like, I want to help you. So if you're going to go out and look for a mentor, figure out like how you can tell a story about how you're going to go and do this stuff anyways, but they want to help the people who are already going to win, because they want that feeling of knowing that someone's going to take action and be successful. Because the worst feeling as a mentor is when you give somebody a bunch of advice, or you give somebody a bunch of coaching and then they just don't do anything with it, and you find out later that they went and got a real job. And it's like, that's such a shame. And the truth is, the money that you pay these people usually is not even equal to what the time is worth, but they do it because they want the fulfillment out of it, and the price you pay is really just to commit. Because like personally, if you're going to give me 20 grand to coach you or whatever it would cost, I can go make 20 grand on 1 or 2 wholesale deals, and my team's going to do the work. So like, what's the motivation? However, I love working with clients because it feels really good when other people do really well. And I'm sure it's the same for you, Justin, right?
Oh yeah, there's nothing that makes me feel better than seeing someone go out and either learn or start or take action or get clarity or whatever it is. Just seeing that aha moment, whether that's cashing a check or or something else, nothing is better than that.
Yeah, well, I can't agree more. So, I mean, in summary, guys, what it really comes down to, the 5 big takeaways are just the 5 fundamentals from talking with very successful investors. It's changed the way that you view challenges, change them to seeing them as opportunities. It's getting ultra focused. It's operating with a clear purpose. It's 4, creating intentionally, having clear set of goals and plans. And it's 5, find a mentor or find a coach, find somebody who you can learn from who's already been there, so you can compress decades into days, as my friend Tony Robbins always says.
I love it. I love it. And so we've had a few questions as we were going, but most of them I was able to answer quickly just by typing in and responding to on the side there. But we're wrapping up. We're about at our hour. So if anybody out there does have any questions, especially around these top 5 insights into mindset that Steven has come up with, please dive right into that question section. Let's get them out there to him sooner than later, because we are wrapping up, and I want to respect Steven's time. He's been very gracious joining us and sharing these awesome insights. And so if anybody's got any thoughts, please. Okay. No, I was scrolling the wrong way. Nope, no, nobody else. Well,
Well,
as
so
I'm
what I
hopefully waiting
what
for somebody to jump in there,
well,
what's a great way for someone to track you down and find you?
Well, so you can find me on all the social media, Steven Pesavento, at Steven.Pesavento, kind of everywhere you look for me. Facebook, have a big audience on Facebook. Would love for you to, friend me on there. Or I really encourage you guys, if you haven't listened to it, check out the Investor Mindset podcast. You can find it on your podcast app or at theinvestormindset.com. We've got a lot of great interviews. It's a lot of fun. There's some good ways to get in touch with me there. And I really do encourage you guys to take advantage of a couple of those free sessions from the summit. It was just so much fun this weekend, seeing so much great feedback from people, and I'd love for folks to be able to get something out of it. But as we're wrapping up, I just want to remind you guys something, and hopefully this was somewhat valuable. Hopefully you took something away from it. The truth is, you can find something within this to take away if you just ask yourself the right questions. But I want to encourage you to decide, what is that action step you're going to take? What's that one thing you're going to do, or 2 things that you're going to do? And if you can right now, right after you get off the call, just, take some action on it. Put it in your calendar, send that text message, send that email, call somebody, or schedule when you're going to do it, because otherwise I would just be such a shame if we weren't going to start applying some of this right off the bat.
Absolutely. So as we're wrapping up, can you go over the top 5 one more time? Can you read off those bullet points?
They view challenges differently. They're ultra focused. They have clear goals and a clear plan. They operate with a clear purpose. And they have mentors and coaches that help see the flaws or see the ways that they can improve.
Awesome. And then where can we go? What's the website again, and how do we get access to those videos?
InvestorMindsetSummit.com. And that's InvestorMindsetSummit.com.
Perfect. Very good. And then there's a spot there that they can enter their email address.
Yeah, enter your email address in the next hour, and anyone who does, my assistant will add you to a list, and we'll send you a couple of those videos for free, and you guys will be able to soak those in. So it should be valuable.
Awesome. Very good. Well, Stephen, really appreciate your time. Thank you so much for coming and sharing. Continue to drop massive amounts of knowledge and wisdom through the podcast. It's been awesome watching you and following you on your journey. And here's to much success. And of course, to everybody on the call and listening, Pine Financial has a ton of money, and we would love to lend it to you. So if you're out there, you have any questions, you can always reach out to us directly at pinefinancialgroup.com. You can hit me up at justin@pinefinancialgroup.com, and be sure to follow Steven on all his socials as well as subscribe to his podcast. Thanks, everyone, and we'll see you next month. Thanks, Steven.
Thank you.